Something extraordinary is happening in the void between worlds. An object, silent and uninvited, has returned from its fiery passage behind the sun, and the new images of it defy every expectation humanity has ever had about comets. Its name is Three-Eye Atlas, and when astronomers looked again after its perihelion, they found no sweeping tail of dust and vapor, no evidence of melting ice or streaming gas. What they saw instead was a compact sphere of light, calm, steady, indifferent to solar radiation, as if the sun itself had no power over it. The discovery struck like a tremor through the scientific community. Comets are supposed to burn and shed, their tails carved by sunlight and solar wind. That is how the universe writes their story. Yet 3 Atlas doesn't follow the script. It brightened by a factor of 5, turned bluer than the sun itself, and then stayed perfectly intact. Dr. Avi Loeb from Harvard calls it an anomaly that refuses to explain itself. Some whisper it might be a relic of ancient physics. Others fear it could be something built. Either way, its silent glow has become the most haunting question in modern astronomy, a question with no tail. On October 29th, 3-Eye Atlas made its closest approach to the Sun, a distance of about 203 million km. At that moment, it absorbed 770 watts of solar radiation per square meter, enough to boil ice and tear molecules apart. This was supposed to be the climax of its journey, the moment it erupted in gas and dust, forming a blazing tail like every other comet in the solar catalog. Instead, telescopes recorded something no one had seen before. The object grew 5 times brighter in hours, yet it showed no signs of vaporization. Instruments that should have detected plumes of sublimating ice found none. Solar observatories recorded a color shift that left astronomers speechless. 3 Atlas had become bluer than the sun itself, a shade no comet has ever produced. Normally, comets glow red because their surfaces are cooler, scattering the sun's light through dust. But blue implies heat, metal, and reflection, not melting snowballs, but something that reflects energy with surgical precision. Dr. Loeb's first thought was simple yet unsettling. If it's brightening without shedding, something else is powering it. When he ran the numbers, he realized that if outgassing alone caused its acceleration, it must have lost at least 10% of its mass, maybe 20. That's billions of tons of matter, and yet the void around it was pristine, perfectly clean. The cosmos showed no trace of what should have been a comet's funeral shroud. Days later came the photographs that forced every scientist to stop and stare. The same telescope that had just imaged a solar system comet called Lemon, displaying the textbook tail sweeping away from the sun, turned its gaze to 3-Eye Atlas. What it captured didn't match anything in the astrophysical record. There was no tail, no plume, no fan of gas, just a circular glowing blur identical to what had been seen months earlier when it was still far from solar heat. If it were a normal comet, the solar wind should have sculpted a luminous streamer stretching millions of kilometers. Instead, 3-Eye Atlas looked untouched, immune to radiation. It's as if the sun had no influence at all. One observer wrote, "The comparison image with Comet Lemon became an emblem of disbelief. Lemon with its elegant arc of light. Atlas a stubborn sphere of mystery. The contradiction was too perfect to ignore. 2 comets, 2 identical observation conditions. One behaves as physics dictates, the other rewrites physics altogether." The simplest explanation is that it isn't a comet at all, but no one dares to write that sentence in a scientific paper. Then came the measurements that shook orbital mechanics itself. 3 Atlas was not following the gravitational path predicted by Newton's equations. It was accelerating, slowly, smoothly, but undeniably. If gravity alone governed its motion, this deviation couldn't exist. Dr. Loeb's calculations suggested that to produce that level of non-gravitational acceleration naturally, the object would need to expel enormous jets of gas. Yet those jets would be visible, and they were. No dust, no vapor, no radiation spike. It was as if an invisible hand was guiding it. Loeb's estimate was brutal. If this were genuine outgassing, the object would have lost at least 1/10 of its entire mass, leaving a massive visible cloud. Nothing appeared. Instead, the object continued serenely along its course, neither slowing nor fragmenting. The equations no longer worked. And in science, when the math stops working, something fundamental has been misunderstood or something new has entered the stage. While orbital data baffled dynamicists, spectral readings stunned chemists. 3I Atlas was bleeding nickel in quantities far greater than iron, a ratio that simply doesn't exist in natural cosmic dust. On Earth, that composition appears only in industrial alloys, metals designed to endure corrosion and heat. Even stranger, its polarization data, the way light twists after bouncing off its surface, was far outside any known range for a comet. Natural ice and rock scatter light predictably. Atlas did not. Its polarization was extreme, negative, chaotic, as though the surface were engineered to manipulate reflection. Dr. Loeb listed these among nearly 10 separate anomalies. The color, the composition, the trajectory, the lack of a tail, the nickel signature, the alignment with the planetary plane, even its proximity to the mysterious 1977 WOW signal. Each could perhaps be coincidence. Together, they built a mosaic of improbability so dense that calling it random felt dishonest. Maybe, Loeb admitted carefully, this trajectory was designed by some intelligence. For a man of science, those words carried the weight of blasphemy. And yet, he said them. The more researchers examined its orbit, the harder it became to dismiss intent. 3I Atlas travels in the plane of the planets, threading almost perfectly through the ecliptic, something no previous interstellar visitor has done. It swept near Mars, Venus, and Jupiter with uncanny precision, as if using their gravity for subtle course adjustments. When plotted backward, its path seemed tailored to slip behind the Sun at the exact moment Earth was on the opposite side, an alignment that hid it from direct observation during its brightest phase. Subscribe to this channel because we'll keep following 3 Atlas until its last glimmer fades. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens when the next visitor crosses our sky. And leave your theory in the comments. What do you think 3 Atlas really is? Because as long as we keep looking up, the universe will keep answering. Sometimes quietly, sometimes in blue, and sometimes with no tail at all.